We are going to learn Salesforce admin basics and deployments using Workbench, Copado, metadata format, Copado source format, which is nothing but SFDX, Azure DevOps with source format, brackets, YAML file, source format, and the release management process and refresh Salesforce refresh process for all the sandboxes, which means that full copy, partial, developer, pro sandbox, and with respect to GitHub tools, GitHub, and we're going to learn Bitbucket, we're going to learn GitLab, we're going to learn Azure Repo, and what else we have? Yeah, so we are going to learn these tools for Git versioning, and also we use VS Code with SFDX integration and perform VS Code with SFDX integration, GitHub desktop integration. I mean, we used to do the deployments using GitHub desktop, and I guess we have pretty much covered with respect to these topics. But when it comes to Copado metadata format, right? So inside that we have multiple theories. I mean, multiple topics, and also source format. You have multiple topics. So here also with respect to Copado metadata format. So Copado Zira integration, Copado data deployments, and Salesforce Chrome extensions, or you can say Edge extensions, -inspector, which for data import and exports. I'll put it in a different line. And SSO configuration. So when I say SSO configuration, so everything will come under the refresh process. There are a lot of topics with respect to refresh process. Inside that, we talk about certificates, we talk about SSO, and the detailed process of the refresh activity. When you refresh a sandbox, what are the steps that you need to take into consideration while doing a refresh? So with respect to source format, the same thing, like how you need to integrate the source format and how do you integrate the metadata format. So we are going to learn in Salesforce CI/CD deployment, which means that in metadata format, you have multiple things like doing an automation of the deployment, the automated journey process of the Salesforce SFTX in with respect to admin, right? So the developer account, starting with developer account and profiles and permission sets and user creation, sharing settings, etc. So you need to understand little bit basics before, if you want to get started with the deployments, right? So you need to understand Salesforce basics, because you want to be a Salesforce DevOps engineer right in the market. So you need to learn some admin basics, and then we can get started with the deployments using Copado, and also with respect to the Salesforce refresh management process. So in interview, right, people will be asking you a lot of questions with respect to the refresh management process, and they'll ask you with respect to the deployments using what are the tool that you use, right? They'll be asking you generic questions that how do you implement that such kind of situations when you're really stuck with the deployment. This is my training topics which will be covered, because metadata and source format itself, it's very huge in terms of learning each and every concept. It's not like that we are going to talk on a high level and then we are not going to stop. We are going to talk in a detail, like how the user story journey process is there, and what what field is used for what. So it means that at the end of the training, you are going to build your own CI/CD pipeline without taking anyone's help. So that is what my intention was. So if you follow daily the list of courses that, I mean, the daily topics and the training sessions, right, you can do that. So first, let's talk about something with respect to Copado. What is this Copado, and why this tool is there in the market? We have multiple tools in the market, right? Why people are talking about Salesforce DevOps, and why we are here today? So if you ask me this question, right? So when I get started with the Salesforce journey, right? So initially we have chain sets. So chain sets is a internal Salesforce tool. So if you have Salesforce license, you can start using the chain sets. It doesn't require any extension, or it doesn't require any external purchase of doing the things. It doesn't require any external coaching of vendor or anything. It has a outbound chain set and inbound chain set. That means that you create a chain set and then you deploy to next app. But the problem is there are a lot of implications with the chain sets. If multiple people are working on the same code, there are a lot of chance of code is getting overwritten, because it is an org to org deployment. So basically, when I say org to org deployment, whatever there in the org, let's say you take a sample pipeline, so dev int uat ppe and then prod. Let's say this is my simple pipeline. So when I do a deployment from dev to int, right, automatically my code will be getting deployed from dev to int org, which means that, let's say I've created a custom field, let's say anything, and dev to int, now it is deployed. Now the same custom field, I'm changing and then deploying it. It is going to deploy it to next environment. So that means that it is not checking conflict, which means that it is not checking whether the changes which I've done is correct or not. It is not telling me that if someone modified on that particular custom field or not. So what's happening is that it is directly going and it is directly overriding the component in the target. But and also you cannot see what exactly you're trying to commit. So the metadata file is hidden. So that is where later you got Ant into market, Ant deployment tool. So you have there build.xml and build.properties, where in build.xml file you define it, the deploy and retrieval process, and in build.properties you define the credentials, which means that, let's say you are doing the deployment from dev to int, right? You will define source and destination credentials, your source and also target credentials. And based on the build.xml file, what are the script that you have written, right? It will invoke and it will try to do the deployment to next org. So here the good thing is the metadata file is visible. So when I say metadata file, let me show you in one of the Salesforce org. So if you go to the user stories and if you click on a new button, so take anything in a real-time example. You take IRCTC application, and while logging into the IRCTC application, you will be seeing a username, and under the username, it will ask you to fill the details, right? So in the same way, if you see here, so this title is nothing but metadata, and this title inside whatever I'm filling it is called data. This is metadata and this is data. Metadata can be deployed. Data can be import or exported using a data imports. Or you have a lot of tools in the market which we have like broadly, and we have Copado data deployments where you create a data template and then you can do a deployment instead of doing a data import and export. So which means that what I'm trying to explain is that the difference of the metadata and data. So when you say title, right, you have developed a field called title, and if you want to see that the XML file of that particular title field, so that can be visible in terms of when you're doing an AND tool. But when it comes to chain sets, it is not visible. So here there is no version control. It is also an org deployment. And then you have Workbench as well. So this is also an org deployment. And later we in the market we got Bamboo, we got Jenkins, and etc. We got multiple tools. But what is the problem with these tools is that you need to learn Git, you need to learn YAML, you need to learn scripting, and this is completely a pure DevOps engineer, irrespective of a role. I mean, irrespective of a technology. So if you ask me, right, for Salesforce, does Bamboo can be used? Of course, it can be used, but altogether, I have to know the extensions of it. I have to know the YAML script, and I have to know something, blah blah blah, etc. But when it comes to Copado, you need to learn any script? No. You need to learn any Git? No. Everything is on UI based. You just need to use the commands. When I say use the commands, you just need to go to the UI, just click on a button. That's it. Boom. It will go and right. It will deploy to next environment. So that is the reason where people started using Copado, because it doesn't have a manual intervention of things. So it doesn't require a Git to be learned. It doesn't require a conflict resolution to be learned. So everything will be taken care by Copado. So now coming back to the tool called Copado, why it is so popular in the market? Because so they have a very good UI, graphical user interface, and the look and feel. If you know Salesforce, right, it is very easy for the people who is having a Salesforce background, right, like a basics or anything, right. It is very easy for them. When I say very easy, so let's say this is my Copado org. So however Salesforce look like, right, it look like the same. Like if you log into a developer.salesforce.com account, how the page will be visible. What is, for example, if you want to go to Sales Cloud, you go to App Launcher and you navigate to Sales Cloud. In the same way, if you want for a Copado object, you can go to Copado object. So the Copado tool is built on top of Salesforce. That means it uses the Salesforce backend code, and it is tightly integrated with Git. So behind the scenes, what's happening also, we are going to talk as part of this session. When I say tightly coupled, so it uses all the Git commands, and it does a deployment for you, and it creates a branches for you. So you no need to create a branches on your site manually. So everything is an automatic process here as a part of a Copado deployment tool. So coming back here, the same thing, Flowsum also, it's same kind of a tool. So as you know, right, you have multiple tools in the market. I mean, let's you take an example of a mobile. You have an Android version, you have an iOS version, right? So iOS version compatible means only certain apps are compatible to iOS. In the same way, for Android, certain apps are compatible. In the same case, here you take an example of Copado. For Salesforce, Copado is compatible, which means that Copado and Flowsum is compatible because they build the OS on top of iOS. In the same way, you put your real-time example with here as well. It's the same. Copado is built on top of Salesforce. Blossom is built on top of Salesforce. Whereas AutoRabbit and GearSet, it is not built on Salesforce. They have their own UI. So here, why Copado has become more popular, because the people who are very good at Salesforce, when I say good at Salesforce, they have learned from basics, or when they get started the journey with Salesforce, right? For them, it is very easy. The look and feel is very easy in terms of Copado and Blossom. Compared to the licensing, right? It is little bit different. You take the same example of Android and iOS, how the Android and iOS mobiles are being sold outside. So it depends on phone by phone. It depends upon the features by features, and that is where you have the pricing, right? In the same way, here also you have the pricing where people tend to use Flowsum for some orgs and Copado for some of the orgs. I heard from some of the important clients like Google and Amazon. I've seen some of the people that are using Copado as the CI/CD deployment tool for doing deployments. And Copado has came up with a lot of innovations. Like they every month, right, you have a lot of upgrades which is coming up. For example, in Salesforce, for every 3 months you have a release, right? Like a summer, winter, spring upgrade, right? The same kind of a thing you have in Copado as well. You have the multiple upgrades where Copado is doing your daily upgrades, the backend upgrades, and they're fixing some of the issues. If something is not working, they're going to work on and they're going to fix it. So in Copado, you have two kinds of deployments into it. One is with metadata format, one is with source format. When I say source format, it's purely a SFDX. It uses SFDX commands to do the deployments, and the metadata format and source format of doing the things in Copado is completely different. For example, if you want to use scratch orgs and if you want to create a packaging version, if you want to create a 2 GB packages or a 1 GB packages, so all those things, right, that can be used using SFDX. So yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that with respect to metadata format, if you learn, right, the source format will be easy, but the UI wise, it is completely different when you're trying to do the deployments. Coming back to Copado, so starting building from a pipeline to end, right? So it will be very easy to learn and it doesn't need any coding or anything. As I said, right, I want from you is that the Salesforce admin basics, you need to understand what is meant by profile, what is meant by permission set, how to create a usage, and what are the sharing settings that are. If something is there, if I miss something, right, we may be covering as a part of the series. So with respect to Copado, these are really needed, and one developer account where you want to practice for, right. Now coming back here, you have Potter Rabbit and you have Gateset, and you have, as we talk here, Azure DevOps, right? So we are not going to talk on all these tools. We are going to talk here Copado metadata format slash source format and Copado Zira integration, Copado ADO integration, Azure integration, ADO integration, Azure Boards integration, and Copado data deployments and Copado best practices, Copado deployment issues. What are the deployment issues? How do you need to resolve? For example, if I have my 2 years of experience in a different domain, now I want to switch to Copado and I want to do the stuff there, and what kind of issues that you get and how to resolve such kind of deployment issues when you're really stuck, and who will be helping you when you're really stuck. I mean, how to resolve such kind of issues, right? That can be talked as a part of this training session as well. So, and then I guess we pretty much covered in terms of Copado what is there inside, but we are not going to talk about no topics covered Copado robotic testing. I don't have experience on Copado robotic testing, but theoretically, I just have a basic experience. So I don't want to cook any story here, and then I don't want to commit that I'll give you Copado robotic testing. No, I'm not going to teach on Copado robotic testing as a part of the series, right? So other topics, right, which what I've committed here, those will be covered. And with respect to the CI/CD deployments, like outside Copado, what we are going to learn is that Azure pipelines, Azure releases, Azure deployment using SFDX, which means that these three are same. What I'm trying to say is that we are going to learn Azure pipelines, Azure releases, Azure deployments with SFDX means create one script and run the deployment using Azure DevOps. As simple as that. So It is very simple. It takes one or two classes to explain you that. But my major focus is on the Git version control. And if you want the Bitbucket or if you want the GitLab or GitHub, right, we'll be covering on that part. And the major core of this classes are majorly focused on Copado and also the Salesforce refresh process and also the Salesforce. What are the daily activities that you do in a real time when you are a Salesforce DevOps engineer, right? So all these topics, like after finishing of the course, you will be understanding the complete Copado, the source format and metadata format. And when you're given a Salesforce refresh activity, how do I need to perform the refresh? If I'm new to the refresh activity, if I'm new to this process, how do I do that? So all the list of activities will be covered as a part of it. And also one more thing called App Exchange installation, how to install an app in Salesforce. Let's say you take the same example of mobile, you go to Play Store and you install it. So in the same way, you have a Salesforce App Exchange where you have to install those App Exchange products on Salesforce to run it. Why? Because let's say you take an example of you got a requirement and you want one application to be available immediately. So you go and build the whole pipe. I mean, the app, no, right? You'll find for some tool which is available in the market. You buy the license and you'll use it. And once your work is done, you can stop using it, or you can renew your licenses, keep on doing it until you build your application, internal application. The same way, right? The App Exchange works like that, and I can show you that how to install the packages with respect to the Copado or any other package extension that is needed. So it is a purely Salesforce DevOps engineer. The outside roles will be called as Salesforce DevOps engineer, Salesforce release engineer, or else infra engineer or Salesforce environment engineer. So it's completely a Salesforce platform. When I say platform, right, it is completely changing into a different one because platform will have multiple things. Like you need to learn Apex, you need to learn other stuff. So it is currently it will be deviating the role basically. I'm just going to give you cover one user story concept on a high level that how the Copado works. So basically, this is a Copado view. Basically, when you log into Copado, this is view. So we are not installing any managed package, but I'll show you how to install a package and how to do that stuff. But you need to go to a playground and we'll be creating a playground as a part of the session. And then you'll be keep on doing you are going to practice everything. So when you onboard to Copado, first thing is the credential object. This credential object means if you want to authenticate, that means if you want to integrate your, let's say you have a orgs. First thing is that you need to have a vision. And as a vision, people ask you, Chandra, I have 4 sandboxes. I want to build a pipeline. Can you tell me that 4 sandboxes, what kind of licenses I need to use? And how do I build my pipeline? Let's say if you take dev, int, QA, UAT, PPE, production. And here I have multiple teams which are on sales service and CPQ team, dev2 and dev3. And dev1 and dev2 is connecting to INT and dev2 and is connecting to CPQ INT. And then it's the same thing to QA, UAT, PPE, and then hotfix to production. Take an example of this is your pipeline where on dev1 sales cloud team will work, on dev2 sales service cloud team will work, on dev3 CPQ team will work, right? So if you want, you can put CPQ dev. If you want, you can put service dev. If you want, you can put sales dev. Right. So now you want to do a connections of these environments in the pipeline, like sales dev has to connect it to INT to QA and all. First thing is that this credential has to be authenticated in Copado. That's where you go to credential object and you create a credential record and you do the authentication. So then the authentication is done. Once you're done with your authentication, next you need to build a pipeline. So I go to pipeline and then I'll show you a small example. This is my pipeline. where I go to pipeline connections and I click on new, and then I'll give you that how to have a connection, which means that from dev 1 to sales dev to INT. So I say sales dev, something like that, and then I connect to my INT instance, and then I click on save. So here you have a source branch and a destination branch. So for that, you need to go to Git repositories, and then if you see this one, I'm authenticating my outside GitHub repository with Copado. I'm integrating that repository with GitHub with Copado using SSH keys. So I generate SSH keys here, and I use SSH keys to update in GitHub. So on a high level, that I'm integrating my Copado with my GitHub repository. If you have Bitbucket, you can integrate with Bitbucket. If you have GitLab, you can integrate. If you have ADO, you can integrate. So they'll give you the UI. You just need to update the URLs. For example, this is my Git. If I want to integrate my Git repository, so let's say test Visualpath. So I click on save. Don't worry on this. I'm going to tell you that what exactly they're doing. So now I have GitHub, I have GitLab, I have on-premise. So I just need to click on this particular button where it will redirect me to the GitHub page, authenticate, automatically it will redirect me. In the same way, if you want to do for GitLab, you can do it. But in case of Copado, the branching is very easy. Like you have only two branches. One is feature, one is promotion branch. Complete branching will be run on these two branches only. Feature branch is nothing but whenever a user story is created, the feature branch gets created out of main, and the promotion branch is nothing but while doing the deployment, this promotion branch will get created. So how it get created, how the merging process is done. So with respect to branching, right, you don't need to do anything. You just need to click on create a user story, just click on deploy. That's it. The branching automatic deployment and the branches is getting merged. If there is any conflicts, Copado can do auto resolve. So it has all some inbuilt features where it can do on its own. If you have pre-deployment steps that can be executed, if you have custom setting records that can be done using Copado deployment, if you have environmental specific values that can be done the deployment using Copado. So if you want to automate the back promotions, if you want to automate the forward promotions, that you can do it. If you want to execute the Apex classes nightly job run, that you can schedule a job. So what I'm trying to say is that you don't need to write any code. You just need to use the UI to build everything. Coming back to the user story process, which I want to tell you. So first thing is that I go click on user story, click next, and let's say test, let's say demo, and the projects and release and credential. From which environment I want to do the deployment. I want to do it from dev. So dev one, and then click on save. That's it. So I don't want this user story process to be created manually. If I want to do automation, which is nothing but Copado Zero integration, where you can do that using a Copado Zero integration, or if you want to do with ADO, you can do with Copado ADO integration as well. So that also we're going to learn as a part of the series. And if you click on the commit changes button, right, which is nothing but if you go to GitHub, Git bash, right, you use the command called git commit hyphen message and all right, whatever the command you're typing in GitHub. Coming back to here, you are just using the page button called git commit, where what are the changes that I'm doing in the org automatically it displays you. You just need to select, for example, I've created a custom object. Now I want to deploy this custom object. Select it, click on commit changes. The commit process will get started, and then the deployment will take place. Once you click on a button called promote and deploy, it will deploy to next environment. So you can put a lot of quality gates, a lot of governance rules as a part of it. I have to tell this that we are going to cover governance processes, quality gates, sonar, code scan, and PMD, how to integrate, right? So with respect to the Copado journey process, right, it is very simple as it's shown in the screen. In the real time also, it is very simple. Just you need to have some vision that how to create a pipeline and what kind of sandboxes that you have that you need to put for one org, and you need to understand some Git basics to do. When I say Git basics, it is outside for learning purpose. That's it. It's here it doesn't require for. So I'll just open a feature branch and I can show you the commit. I don't have any Git bash. I don't have anything. And I can see the manual commit. I mean to say, I've seen a commit where Copado has done for me.